In the middle of the chaos stood Kamaria. Someone shouted that her beauty was a curse. Another voice screamed that she had bewitched the village. A rough push sent her stumbling toward the edge of the riverbank. Hands grabbed her arms. Her fingers reached for something, anything, but the ground slipped beneath her feet. The river was angry that evening. Dark water rushed against the rocks as the sky turned the color of burning clay. Villagers gathered along the muddy bank, their voices sharp with anger, their faces twisted by something deeper than hate. Her royal blue gown shimmered softly in the fading light, the gold embroidery catching the last rays of the sun. Her long curls fell over her shoulders like dark waves. She looked like a princess who had wandered into the wrong story. Kamaria's heart pounded as she looked at the faces around her. These were the same people who once smiled at her in the marketplace. The same women who shared food with her mother. Now their eyes burned with jealousy and fear. She tried to speak, but the crowd did not want the truth. Then the world tilted. The cold river swallowed her whole. And as the current dragged her beneath the dark water, Kamaria realized something terrifying. The people who hated her the most were the ones she once called family. Long before the river tried to swallow Kamaria, she was simply a girl who lived at the edge of the village. Their home was a small clay hut surrounded by cassava plants and tall mango trees. It was not a rich home, but it was peaceful. Kamaria was the only child of her parents. Her father was a quiet farmer who believed that hard work spoke louder than words. Her mother was a warm woman whose laughter could soften the hardest day. Together they raised their daughter with kindness and patience. But Kamaria was not like other girls in the village. From the moment she began walking to the river to fetch water, people noticed her. It was not only her beauty, it was the way she carried herself, the grace in her steps, the calm light in her eyes. Her skin glowed like polished mahogany under the sun. Her long curls moved like soft clouds around her shoulders. Even when she wore simple village cloth, she looked like someone born for a palace. At first the village women admired her. They would hold her chin and smile. Such a beautiful child. The gods have blessed this one. Kamaria never understood why they said those things. To her, life was simple. Wake before sunrise, help her mother cook, walk to the river, work in the fields, laugh with children in the dust roads. But beauty has a strange way of changing the hearts of people. As Kamaria grew older, admiration slowly turned into something darker. The smiles became whispers. The whispers became rumors. Some women said no girl should shine that brightly. Others said beauty like hers must come from powerful spirits. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the village, jealousy began to grow like a poisonous weed. Kamaria did not see it yet, but the village was already beginning to turn against her. At first the whispers were quiet, so quiet that Kamaria never noticed them. When she walked through the village square, people still greeted her. Some smiled politely, some looked away. But behind her back, the words began to change. 3 young women in the village watched Kamaria more closely than anyone else. They had grown up in the same dusty streets, fetched water from the same river, and worked in the same fields. Yet wherever Kamaria walked, attention followed her. Where Kamaria stood, people gathered. The first girl was Adana, proud and sharp-tongued. She believed beauty should bring power, and she could not understand why Kamaria never used it. The second was Zola, quieter but more calculating. She watched everything carefully and spoke only when her words could cause the most damage. The third was Naira, the youngest of them. Her jealousy came from something deeper, fear that she would always be invisible beside someone like Kamaria. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple above the village, the 3 girls sat together near the market stalls. Their voices were low, but their words were heavy. "Have you noticed how everyone treats her like a queen?" Adana muttered. Zola folded her arms slowly. "Beauty like that is not natural." Naira glanced nervously toward the path where Kamaria often walked. My grandmother says spirits sometimes mark people to hide among us. The idea hung in the air like smoke. From that night on, their whispers grew sharper. Soon the rumors spread from one hut to another. Some said Kamaria's beauty came from river spirits. Others said the forest protected her. A few even claimed that animals grew quiet when she passed. The village elders tried to ignore the gossip at first. But fear is like dry grass. Once a spark touches it, the fire spreads quickly. And the spark had already been lit. Kamaria still lived her days the same way she always had. She helped her mother cook. She carried water from the river. She smiled at children playing along the road. But something had changed. Where once people admired her, now many watched her carefully, as if waiting for proof that the rumors were true. Kamaria felt it in the silence, in the way conversations stopped when she entered, in the way some mothers pulled their children closer. The village that once felt like home was slowly becoming a place of suspicion. And Kamaria had no idea that 3 jealous hearts had already begun shaping her fate. Rumors are like shadows. First they are small and harmless. But if the sun keeps moving, those shadows grow longer and darker until they swallow everything. Within weeks, the whispers about Kamaria had spread through every corner of the village. At the riverbank, women spoke quietly as they filled their clay pots. In the marketplace, traders leaned close to exchange uneasy stories. Even children began repeating things they barely understood. Some said the spirits of the forest protected Kamaria. Others claimed the river itself reflected her beauty because she belonged to it. And every time someone repeated the rumor, it grew a little more frightening. Kamaria felt the change in ways she could not explain. The friendly greetings she once received became stiff nods. Laughter stopped when she approached. Even the village dogs sometimes barked nervously as she passed. One afternoon she returned from the river carrying water and found her mother sitting silently outside their hut. Her mother's face looked troubled. "People are talking again," she said quietly.
"Child, we must be careful."
I know, but I'm scared.
"I know. Stay close."
Her mother hesitated. "They say your beauty is not natural." Kamaria laughed softly at first, thinking it was a foolish joke. But when she saw the worry in her mother's eyes, the laughter faded. "Mother, I am the same girl I have always been," she said. "I know," her mother replied quickly, taking Kamaria's hand. "But fear can make people believe anything." While Kamaria and her mother sat outside their home, 3 other girls were already working to turn fear into something far worse. That evening Adana, Zola, and Naira gathered near the old baobab tree at the center of the village. Several elders were already there, discussing the strange tension spreading among the people. Adana stepped forward boldly. "There is something the elders must understand," she said. Zola lowered her voice carefully. "Beauty like Kamaria's is not normal. Even the river glows when she walks near it." Naira pretended to tremble. "My grandmother says spirits sometimes hide in human form." The elders exchanged uneasy glances. None of them truly believed the stories. But doubt had already entered their minds. And doubt, once planted, can grow into something dangerous. As the sun disappeared and darkness slowly covered the village, the whispers around Kamaria began changing into something far more powerful: suspicion. And suspicion was only the first step toward fear. The meeting beneath the great baobab tree did not end the rumors, fed them. That night the village sky darkened earlier than usual. Heavy clouds gathered above the fields, and the wind carried dry dust through the narrow paths between huts. People whispered that even the sky felt restless. Inside her small clay home, Kamaria helped her mother prepare the evening meal. She noticed her mother glancing toward the door again and again, as if expecting someone to arrive with bad news. Outside, Adana, Zola, and Naira moved from hut to hut like shadows. They spoke quietly but carefully. They reminded people about strange things they had seen. They talked about the way the river shimmered when Kamaria walked near it. They described dreams where spirits walked through the forest wearing a woman's face. Fear grew quickly in tired hearts. By the time the moon rose over the village, many people were already convinced that something unnatural surrounded Kamaria. The elders met again. This time their faces were serious. "We must protect the village," one of them finally said. And the terrible idea that followed would soon change Kamaria's life forever. The rumors did not fade. Instead, they grew stronger with every passing day. Where Kamaria once walked freely through the village, she now felt invisible walls forming around her. Conversations stopped when she approached the market. Women lowered their voices when she fetched water at the river. Children who once laughed with her now watched from a distance as if she carried something dangerous. Kamaria tried to ignore it. She told herself that people would soon remember the girl they had always known. But jealousy is patient, and the three girls who started the whispers were not finished. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon and the sky burned with deep orange light, Adana, Zola, and Naira met again beneath the great baobab tree. The village square was nearly empty, and the long shadows of the tree stretched across the ground like dark fingers. Adana spoke first, her voice low but filled with determination. "The village already fears her," she said. Zola nodded slowly, her eyes calculating every possibility. "If fear grows just a little more, they will believe anything." Naira shifted nervously but forced a smile. "Then we give them something to believe." In that quiet moment, a dangerous idea began to take shape. A plan that would not only destroy Kamaria's reputation, but might destroy her life as well. The idea born beneath the baobab tree did not stay secret for long. Adana, Zola, and Naira began visiting different parts of the village the next morning, speaking carefully with the women at the river and the traders in the marketplace. They never shouted their accusations. Instead, they spoke softly, letting their words travel like smoke through dry grass. They reminded people how strangely beautiful Kamaria was, how the sunlight always seemed to follow her, how animals sometimes paused when she walked past the fields. Zola described dreams where the river shimmered around Kamaria's reflection. Naira whispered that her grandmother once warned that spirits sometimes hide behind beautiful faces. Little by little, suspicion turned into belief. By evening, the elders began hearing the same stories from many mouths. Some villagers argued that Kamaria had always been kind. Others feared that kindness might only be a disguise. The elders gathered again beneath the baobab tree. They did not want to harm the girl, but they feared the village might suffer if the rumors were true. After hours of tense discussion, one elder spoke the words that sealed Kamaria's fate. If the river truly belonged to the spirits, then the river would reveal the truth. And so the terrible decision began to spread across the village like a storm. The morning after the elders spoke, the village felt different. Kamaria sensed it before anyone said a word. When she walked toward the marketplace, conversations faded into uncomfortable silence. Women who once greeted her warmly now avoided her eyes. A group of children who had often followed her through the fields stopped playing when she passed. Kamaria tried to smile anyway. She carried a small woven basket, planning to buy fruit for her mother like she did every week. But the air around her felt heavy, as if something unseen had settled over the village. Near the water well, two women whispered behind their hands. One of them glanced nervously at Kamaria. "The elders are meeting again tonight," she murmured. "They say the river will tell the truth." Kamaria paused. The river? She didn't understand. Across the marketplace, Adana watched from the shade of a wooden stall. Zola stood beside her, arms folded calmly, while Naira shifted nervously at the edge of the crowd. Their whispers had worked. Fear had begun spreading through the village like dry grass catching fire. And once fear took hold, reason rarely survived. By evening, more villagers gathered near the baobab tree, not to protect Kamaria, but to watch what would happen next. By the time the sun began to sink behind the distant hills, the entire village seemed to know. Kamaria felt the change everywhere she walked. Eyes followed her from doorways. Conversations stopped when she passed. Even the air itself felt tense, as though the village was holding its breath. Near the center of the square, the elders had gathered once again beneath the massive baobab tree. Its wide branches stretched across the evening sky like dark arms, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. Villagers slowly surrounded the meeting place. Some came out of curiosity, others came out of fear. Kamaria approached carefully, her royal blue gown brushing softly against the dry earth as the fading sunlight shimmered along its golden embroidery. Her curls moved gently in the evening breeze, framing her calm but uncertain face. She looked at the elders with quiet respect. "What is happening?" she asked softly. For a moment no one spoke. Then Adana stepped forward from the crowd. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "The spirits of the river have been disturbed," she declared. "And the village believes you are the reason." A wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Kamaria's heart pounded. She tried to speak again. But this time the villagers were no longer whispering. They were shouting. And once fear becomes a crowd's voice, it grows louder than the truth. The shouting did not stop. If anything, it grew louder. What had begun as whispers and fearful glances was now a storm of voices rising beneath the dark branches of the baobab tree. Villagers pushed closer together, their fear feeding the anger spreading through the crowd. Kamaria tried again to speak. "I have done nothing to harm the village," she said, her voice trembling but clear. But the words vanished beneath the noise. Someone shouted that the river would reveal the truth. Another voice cried that the spirits must decide. Before Kamaria could step away, rough hands grabbed her arms. Gasps rippled through the crowd as several villagers began pulling her forward through the square. Dust rose beneath their feet as the crowd slowly moved together like a wave. Kamaria struggled to keep her balance as they dragged her along the narrow path that led toward the riverbank.
Please, I don't want this.
It is for the good of all. The river awaits.
Let me go!
Keep moving.
No! Release me!
We must.
The gold embroidery catching faint flashes of fading light. Her long curls fell across her shoulders as she tried desperately to understand how everything had changed so quickly. The river's roar was already growing louder ahead, and the villagers kept moving. By the time the crowd reached the riverbank, the sky had turned the color of burning clay. Dark clouds gathered above the rushing water.
Why won't they move? This can't be happening. Please, someone help me.
Kamaria stumbled as the villagers forced her forward. The river was swollen from recent rains, its dark currents crashing against jagged rocks along the bank. Foam swirled along the surface like restless spirits. Some villagers hesitated when they saw the river's fury, but the fear that had taken hold of them was stronger than doubt. "This is the only way to know the truth," one elder declared, his voice shaking but firm. "If the spirits of the river reject her, the water will reveal it." The crowd murmured in uneasy agreement. Kamaria looked from face to face, her heart pounding in her chest. These were people she had known her entire life. The same neighbors who once laughed with her in the marketplace, who once shared food with her family during harvest festivals. Now their eyes held something colder. Kamaria looked at the elders with trembling eyes and asked what she had done wrong. None of them answered. Fear had stolen their courage. The elder who first spoke about the river stepped forward again and declared that if Kamaria was innocent, the river spirits would return her safely. Before she could respond, the crowd pushed closer. Kamaria stumbled backward on the wet ground. Her mother's desperate cries echoed across the water. Then a sudden shove sent Kamaria slipping over the edge. The cold river swallowed her instantly, pulling her beneath the dark surface. For a moment the villagers watched in stunned silence. Some realized too late what they had done. But the current had already carried Kamaria away into the darkness. Far downstream, a hunter named Omari was checking his traps when he heard the distant splash followed by the sound of rushing water. Curious, he followed the riverbank until he spotted a figure struggling in the current. Without hesitation he plunged into the cold water and pulled Kamaria toward the shore. She collapsed onto the sand, coughing and trembling as the hunter wrapped his cloak around her shoulders. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw a stranger kneeling beside her with deep concern. Omari listened quietly as Kamaria explained what had happened. His expression hardened with disbelief. He could not understand how an entire village could treat someone so cruelly. When the first light of dawn appeared through the trees, he helped Kamaria stand. Together they began the long walk back toward the village. When Kamaria returned to the village at sunrise beside the hunter, silence spread across the square. Villagers stared in disbelief. Her mother ran forward crying with relief. Kamaria told the elders everything that had happened, her voice shaking but clear. Slowly the crowd turned toward Adana, Zola, and Naira. Their confidence disappeared as the truth emerged. The elders declared their punishment immediately. Yet Kamaria surprised everyone. Instead of asking for revenge, she asked the elders to forgive them. Her kindness struck the villagers harder than any punishment could have. In that moment they finally understood how jealousy had blinded them. The girl they once feared had shown more courage and compassion than the entire village combined. From that day forward Kamaria was no longer seen as a curse. She became a symbol of grace and strength, and the village never forgot the lesson the river had taught them.